Warning, the following video contains spoilers. If you don't want this episode spoiled for you, switch the video off now. Blimey, all the feels from this week's episode, huh, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think about this week's episode of My Hero Academia? Let me know in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you shortly, either directly in the comments themselves or towards the end of next week's video in its own special segment. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do, because YouTube's an increasingly spare place for small content creators. Support your local small content creator today. It does they, mate. Power of good. This is an episode which is split between a major fight sequence and a lot of flashbacks and backstory. Now, a few weeks ago, this is something that I absolutely detested and hated. Or to be more accurate, I got bloody sick of it, as it seems to be that just about every single episode in the "we've got to save Eri" part of the whole Hasaikai story arc stuff was episodes like this, where it'd be a fight sequence and flashbacks. Both interesting in and of themselves, but after a while you just seem to get bloody bored of it. This week, however, blimey, this week's episode was on a whole other level. Blimey, look, I'm just going to come out and say it here and now, I think this is one of the best things I've seen on television in a very, very long time. High praise indeed, maybe, but given how certain other TV shows I've been watching have turned out recently, well, this certainly I don't think had much competition. The backstory that we get for both of our villains, I have to say, is just brilliant. It is motivation which feels identifiable, it feels honest, it feels reasonable, it feels relatable. These are two characters that didn't become evil due to weirdness to do with their superpowers, or because they were murderous psychopaths, or because they had daddy issues. These are two characters which were spurned by the society in which they lived in, and the only reasonable thing that they felt that they could do was turn to a life of villainy and criminality. The only way that they could bring about the change that they felt this world needed was to do bad things. Whilst I may not agree with Gentle Criminal's master plan in the end, I can understand why he's wanting to do it. He is a person that failed his provisional license exam so many times, his tutor just says to them, look, why don't you just give up on this? You're not good enough for this, you might as well just go off and do something else with your life. So he's forced out of being a superhero because he's crap at doing the exams. So then he ends up being just average Joe, living and working in this, doing what he does, and he tries to save the day, he tries to prove to everyone that he can be a hero, and it all goes horribly wrong, and it ends up resulting him in getting into prison or into major problems, and he becomes an outcast in society. He's forced to live off the streets, he's forced to live in some crappy apartment and forage for vegetables. That's how harsh and horrible this world that our characters live in truly is. We've only ever really seen it from the positive side of things. We've only ever seen it from the good side of things with Midoriya and his friends, or at best even with the villains. They seem to have a charmed life. They're either working with the greatest villains that have ever been, or they're part of long-standing historical criminal families. With these two characters, the reason why they are bad is because society just said to them, we don't want anything to do with you. And despite their best efforts to live a better, truer, more lawful life, they just couldn't. Brava just wanted someone to love and someone to believe in, just wanted someone that would love her back, and it ends up forcing her down a YouTube rabbit hole which effectively ends up getting her radicalised by suspect material. Gentle Criminal wanted to be a hero so much that for him, the only way for him to become a hero is if the whole notion of heroes and villains is just washed away, so that then maybe he does have a chance in being a hero, or at the very least ensuring that no one else has to go through the same pain and suffering that he had. As I said in previous episodes, I don't see this guy necessarily as being evil, as being a villain. He feels like he's some kind of true neutral character, just a levelling force that wants to change this world he sees for the better, so that you don't have these labels and that people can actually have a chance to pursue their dreams. The path that he has taken, Midoriya could himself quite easily have fallen down. Had he not gotten one for all, he would have probably fallen down the same path. He would never have become a hero at UA. He would have just become some crappy, depressed middle manager working at a Cinnabon and spent the rest of his life cursing at the fact that he himself could never be a hero. Maybe he would have ended up falling down a similar kind of path to this and deciding, let's just blow up the whole thing so that everyone else can get a chance, or at least I get a chance, or hell to hell with the whole world, let's set it all on fire. And all because of the way that this whole universe works. Whilst this world is not itself a dystopia, it certainly isn't that utopian despite all the superpowers and the fancy technologies that we have. This episode, as well as informing us as to the backstory of these two villains, gives us an insight into the mechanics of this world in a far more blunt and relatable kind of way. Like, so many people I know, when they watch this program, they imagine themselves in this world. They imagine the kind of life that they would have if they would have superpowers. They imagine themselves going off to their regional equivalent of UA and becoming a really great superhero and have fantastic OC Mary Sue adventures. But in reality, they could quite easily have turned out more or less as they do in reality, or not that much detached or removed away from Gentle Criminal himself. Like, imagine an exam that you screwed up at some point in your past, and that being the one that determines whether or not you become a hero. Whether or not you get that license, it's going to end up enabling you to become a hero in the end. Or some final exam that determines whether or not you become a hero full stop. And that's the kind of thing that could have happened to you in this universe. This is the brilliance of this episode. It shows us so much, but at times a little bit too much, but at the same time it's showing us not just the backstory for our two villains and making them relatable in such a way that I'm sat here thinking, you know, I'd be perfectly fine if they won this. I'd be perfectly fine if they did whatever horrible thing is they're planning to do at the sports festival. I'd be perfectly fine with that. I'd be perfectly fine with that. You know, that's the kind of situation they had me feeling in the end of it. Like, I'd be fine with them just getting away with it in the end, but they don't. But at the same time, it shows us exactly what this world truly is like, and again, whilst it's not dystopia, it ain't exactly bed of roses either, is it, ladies and gentlemen? Whilst the backstory stuff itself is fantastic, the actual content of it is brilliant, the truth of the matter is that I can't get over it. I think that it was done in a very cack-handed way. This is an episode where like 50% of the runtime is dedicated to flashbacks and backstory. This is all the information that I feel is stuff that we should have learnt progressively as their story arc had developed, rather than throwing it all in seemingly the episode before they're just written out the show completely. I think this is their final full episode in the entire show, so just getting it here and now, it feels rather lame to me. This kind of information I think should have been known a lot sooner, because otherwise it just makes it feel as though we're now going to have to go back and recontextualise everything they've done up until this point, which is never good. I hate recontextualisation when it comes to character motivations, because in the end it just ends up feeling like oh no, our bad guy wasn't actually bad, he was just misunderstood all this time, which on a positive thing could end up meaning that it actually makes you appreciate the character a lot more, or it just doesn't do anything for you and you just end up feeling the same way you were beforehand, which, yeah, even though this has changed my opinion of both these characters, yeah, let's not do this. Though apparently, from what I can gather, this kind of thing of having an character's entire backstory and flashback stuff is typical for anime and manga stuff, so yeah, this is just a thing we've got to deal with, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? The fight sequence this week was brilliant, truly fantastic, one of the best we've had in this entire show's run, mostly due to the fact of the emotional stakes within it. Due to the backstories we end up getting within this week's episode, for me at least, it makes me feel a lot more conflicted in the end as to where this whole fight is going, as to really who should end up winning it. On the one hand, you really want our villains to win it, because you really want them to finally get that one win in their life, which will turn them around and make them feel as though they really belong and they have some kind of chance in success in life. But at the same time, you understand that if they do win, they're going to end up doing something horrible and villainous at the same time. So in the end, you just kind of sat there feeling deeply conflicted, and it's emotion which, whilst a horrible feeling to have, at the same time, it makes you think and it makes you appreciate the writing and what's going on in this story a lot more. This is the kind of feeling that I should be having with many other programs, which sadly I'm not getting. Sure, this might not be the same kind of fight stuff that we've had with Deku versus Overhaul or All for One versus All Might, but still, what's going on within this fight itself whilst it may not be laser beams, explosions and backflips left, right and centre, it's still a brilliant battle to end up beholding because you're just so invested in all three of our characters that are taking part within it. Anyway, enough from that, let us go into the overview to wrap up my feelings into a nice, neat little package. And now the overview, what do you think about the episode as a whole? And as a whole, if you cannot guess it by now, I think that this episode was fantastic. Really brilliant, really amazing, with the kind of emotional stakes as sorely lacking in major motion pictures, let alone a television program like this. This is truly one of the best things I've seen on television this year, and one of the best episodes I've seen in the entire run of My Hero Academia. Yes, I really do not like the fact this episode was stuffed so full of backstory and flashbacks. I don't like that aspect of the program. I wish that at very least it was doled out more progressively rather than just done in one large chunk during this character's final appearance in this show, which is what it definitely looks like. But from here and now, the episode itself is still fantastic, brilliantly animated, and just one more thing, that the moment in the episode where Brava just realises the jig is up and everything they've fought for and everything they've gone through is over and they're about to get arrested, the look in her face is just heartbreaking. It really is. Just kudos to everyone involved in the episode. It's really brilliant. One of the best things I've seen in a very, very long time. But what about you, dear listener? What do you think about this week's episode of My Hero Academia? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you shortly, either in the comments themselves or towards the end of next week's video. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, and click the bell for all other kinds of YouTube stuff, because YouTube is an increasingly scary place for small content creators. Be sure to